Hey everyone, good morning. It's about 9:02 on this Thursday. I don't have to be at work till about 2:30, so I got plenty of time. Um, you know, hold on for a sec. Yeah, I have to. Yeah, I'm just doing that because sometimes my camera has gone off a few times, and I don't know why. Um, but with WWE's with the WWE Raw ratings sinking, and the SmackDown ratings not doing so well and SmackDown's ratings not doing so well as well. The biggest question is what has to change? A lot of people say that it's Vince McMahon, that Vince McMahon needs to step down. Now, I've said this in another video, I believe, that I think what Vince McMahon's trying to do secretly, and maybe he's let some people in on it, is he's trying to relive the Federation years. That, like, if this is his last hurrah before he steps down and passes the torch to his daughter and his son-in-law, most obviously, that he's trying to go out the way he was put on the map. That he's trying to go out with a Federation-like era of entertainment. Like, he's trying to establish who are the good guys, who are the bad guys, who's the heroes, who's the villains. And that in itself is what's causing the writing in the booking in WWE right now, the quality to be downgraded in such a way, because he's so determined to have certain individuals on top, as not just on top, but he's so determined to have certain individuals viewed as the good guys, as the heroes, or the heroines, if you will. Well, he wants to establish he wants people to view, he basically is focused on having certain people viewed as the villains or the villainous. Kind of that whole good guy, bad guy deal again. Like I said, that whole good guy, bad guy thing. It basically, secretly, in a sense, he's trying to, like I say, go out the way his company was put on the map, and that's having a quality of sports entertainment where you establish who are the good guys and the bad guys, the heroes, the villains, the heroines, the villainous, and it's like, that's causing a lot of trouble behind the scenes. Now, even though in my opinion that might be part of the reason this is happening, because I truly believe that's what Vince McMahon is doing. He wants to go out the way he came in, the way he was put on the map. He wants to ride off into the sunset with by having one last hurrah with a Federation-like era. But then on the other hand, even though, if that is the case, and I, in my opinion, believe it is, if that is the case, and that's what's kind of causing the downgrade in product, there are other means or other reasons as well. In fact, one of the main reasons that a lot of people look at is the fact that, and a lot of people have pointed this out, is the fact that you have all this great talent coming up from NXT. You have, the Tyler Breezes, you have the Kevin Owens, the Dean Ambroses, and all these people that made good on who they were in NXT. They made good by who they were in NXT. As well as the divas like Charlotte, Sasha Banks, Becky, all these ladies that made a good name for themselves in NXT, and yet the floundering the floundering up on the main roster. And a lot of people count that as one of the reasons why the product has degraded. The fact that you're not taking people like Owens, Neville, who else? Like Owens, Neville, Calistro. You tease something with him. You know, Sasha Banks, Charlotte, Becky. You know, and who knows who else down the line. It's like you're not taking the opportunity to elevate these people, these NXT stars, these NXT men and women that made a name for themselves on the NXT roster, that basically shined and have made people look at NXT as the true A show of WWE and the true main roster of WWE, which everybody wants to be part of, and made them look at Raw and SmackDown as the new developmental territory. And when you have something like that, it's like, you know, and when you have something like this happening, you're left to ask the question, why? Why aren't they utilizing them? Well, there's always a superstitious reason. There's always some kind of reasoning behind it. One of the main reasons I believe that certain superstars and divas in NXT that are called up from NXT, the reason they're not getting the opportunities they deserve or they have earned while they were in NXT, the reason they're not allowed to be the way they were in NXT is, and this is just a theory, but there's a lot of, but in my opinion, and I'm sure a lot of people will agree, but this is just an opinion and a theory, an opinionated theory, let's put it that way, that one by the name of Kevin Dunn, who is the head guy behind Raw, one of the head creative guy behind Raw, beside, you know, the kind of Vince McMahon's right-hand man, if you will, that he's secretly behind that. That unless Vince McMahon is okay with a certain NXT star and says, hey, this guy or this girl, you know, they're the person we got to go to. They're the people we should shine the spotlight on. We should push them. Unless he's okay with that person, they're not going to go anywhere. And Kevin Dunn, if he hears Vince McMahon's high on somebody and says, hey, go ahead, push that person, let them have the ball and run with it, yeah, he'll get behind them. But in an opinionated theory, it's almost like if that's not the case, and you're mainly someone being brought up because you were part of Triple H's baby, you are a graduate of his baby, then maybe out of spite, knowing he's not going to get control of the company when Vince steps down, Kevin Dunn's going to do whatever it takes to make these men and women look bad, and thus, in the long run, humiliate Triple H and make him look bad, and perhaps, in a last desperate attempt, try to get Vince McMahon to swing a decision over to him to make him the next guy in charge of the company. And believe me when I say this, if that is the case, and this is just an opinionated theory of mine, then, and I'm sure some people might have that same opinionated theory, then that's the last thing people want. I mean, if that is the case. Because we all know that if Triple H was in Kevin Dunn's position, these men and women that have come up from his baby NXT, they would be given, despite how you feel about Hunter or Paul Levesque, these men and women would be given the opportunity to shine. They'd be given the opportunity to do what they've done in NXT on the main roster. But because Triple H is not in that position yet, and Kevin Dunn is, it's 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 just it's just hard. It just becomes hard for these men and women in NXT that come up to the main roster to get an opportunity, and it's hard for the fans that they make in NXT that follow them up to the main roster to get behind them. I mean, sure, you can give them a big hit, a big win here and there just to establish they're now part of the main roster. But then after that, then what? What are you going to do with them after that? You see, that to me is the biggest question. That to me is the biggest question. Hold on for a sec. That to me is the biggest question that myself and any other fans have had. It's like, you know, what's the reasoning for not letting these men and women shine? And it's not just them either. It's not just the NXT graduates that get called up. No. It's also certain talents that have been there since not since the beginning, but since a different era in time. And they're not given any opportunities still. They're not given a chance to run with the ball and score. You know, you take a look at someone like Dolph Ziggler. Here's a guy that basically, when he was the world champion, world heavyweight champion, his title runs didn't mean anything. They didn't. You know, his first title run only lasted 20 minutes. His second title run, yeah, it was a cash-in, it was successful. But it barely meant anything because he got injured with a concussion. And then when he came back, he lost the title. And he lost the title on essentially what was a double turn, if you will. So it's like you give this guy 2 meaningless title reigns. You do the same, although they had a tiny bit more impact, but you do the same with Daniel Bryan. It's like, you know, what is WWE's problem? And yet, on top of that, even though he's a great asset to have for the company, you allow Brock Lesnar to become your champion, and he's barely there. He's barely there to the point that when it came to WrestleMania this past year, you decide to put the belt on somebody else because you know putting the belt on Brock was a mistake. Even though maybe it was in his contract that he was going to have a reign as champion, it was a mistake. And then to top that all off, your original plan at first is to put the belt on Roman Reigns, which you did very briefly at Survivor Series, to kind of tease us of what's to come, but yet then you change it at the last second to say, oh, Seth Rollins is going to cash in and going to rock out of WrestleMania, end the show as champion. And why? Because pretty much just like with Survivor Series, it takes you almost to the it takes the WWE creative almost to the last second to realize, hey, Roman Reigns doesn't have that support yet that we want him to have. So we got to put it on somebody else. And Seth Rollins, good choice. In the long run, good choice, no matter how you feel about him. No matter how you feel he was booked or whatever, Seth Rollins was a good choice. Sheamus, on the other hand, is very questionable. You're trying to build him back up. And why? Because you have a depleted roster right now. You have a depleted roster, and now you're forced to take some mid to upper mid-card guys and put them in the main event spotlight for a while until certain individuals come back from injuries or from whatever they're doing. Then you can focus on them again. And speaking of people that And speaking of those that people want to see in the main event, that people actually will tune into Raw, help your ratings increase on Raw and on SmackDown, that people want to see and get behind, people in the audience will get behind, Daniel Bryan. You know, a lot of people question why WWE Creative bringing this guy back? What is the problem? He's been booked, he's been cleared. What seems to be the problem with them not bringing him back? I'll tell you the problem. The problem is the fact that WWE officials and creative and booking don't want Daniel Bryan to mess up the Roman Reigns plans again. They don't. 2 years, this year, earlier at the beginning of this year, and last year, around 30, people screwed the WWE out of the original plans. WrestleMania 30 was supposed to be Batista, Randy Orton, Batista as the babyface. Did not work because fans wanted Daniel Bryan. They were behind him. Roman Reigns wins the Royal Rumble this year, but still fans want Daniel Bryan. Why? Because they don't want to get behind a muscle guy. They want change. Them basically telling Vince McMahon, Triple H, Stephanie, Kevin Dunn, all these head officials in WWE, hey, we'll keep booing we'll keep booing your chosen ones until you give us what we want. And what we want are people like Daniel Bryan that can go in the ring, speak on the mic, and just be overall what we want. Basically, be someone we can live vicariously through. Why do you think fans got pissed at the fact that Kevin Owens, even though he was sick, was not at Raw a few weeks ago? Because they want someone like him that they could live vicariously through. And yet WWE Creative just doesn't understand that. WWE just doesn't, like I said in one video, just doesn't get it. They just don't get it. And that's what infuriates people. I mean, why do you think some people walked out of Raw, left the arena this past Monday night on Raw? It wasn't because, oh, it's getting late, we gotta get the kids to bed. No. It was like, we ain't dealing with this shit anymore. Why do you think you're losing viewers after hour? You start out strong and it decreases. Why? Because they're telling you, we don't want to deal with this shit anymore. You give us what we want and we'll watch. I mean, if Vince McMahon was to come out and say, do you want Daniel Bryan against Kevin Owens, 60-minute, 2 out of 3 falls Iron Man match? Alright, and people would say yes, and he'd say, then that's what you get. And word gets out that that's going to happen, people would tune in because they're like, all right, Ring of Honor likes, it'd be like, all right, we're going to get a 60-minute, 2 out of 3 fall Iron Man match, just like in Ring of Honor and in the Indies. WWE's listening, yay! Because, okay, even though that was a little bit of, that sounded a little bit ridiculous, that's basically what they want, because through guys like Owens and Daniel Bryan, they can live vicariously through these guys and say, hey, if they could do it, maybe someday I could do it if I still want to do it, or my child could do it if they want to grow up and do it. It may not, hey, they may not be big and muscled, but hey, if these guys could do it, they could do it. That's what they want. But it's because of the fact that WWE is so dead set on Roman Reigns being the guy and getting that fan base behind him. They're not going to do that. They're not going to bring Daniel Bryan back, and if they do, it's going to be after Roman wins the championship. The smart money for WWE, if anything, come WrestleMania, is to get Daniel Bryan back at the Royal Rumble, let him win it, put him in the main event against Roman Reigns for the title, and let him win it. That'll help you get that record-breaking crowd that you want. That'll help you get that record-breaking crowd that you want. But if you don't start listening to the fans, then I don't know how you're going to break. I don't know how you're going to break that record. I don't know how you're going to break that indoor attendance record. You see,